The downpour in Lagos was relentless that evening. Victoria Island's streets shimmered with reflections of traffic lights, rain pooling in every corner. Most people hurried past in designer coats or sheltered under umbrellas. But under a flickering street lamp stood a woman who looked oddly serene amidst the chaos. Her clothes were plain, her shoes worn, and her handbag was torn at the side. Yet there was grace in the way she stood, unmoved by the storm. Her name was Amara Bennett, and no one could tell she was the daughter of Edward Bennett, the most powerful billionaire in West Africa. Jason Okafor had just closed a long day of pitching to investors. He was driving his old Toyota Corolla through the storm when he spotted Amara. Something about her stillness in the rain made him stop. He rolled down his window, leaned out slightly, and called, "Hey, are you all right?" She turned, her face calm, her eyes warm despite the chill. "Just heading home," she replied with a half smile. Without hesitation, Jason stepped out, offered her his umbrella, and opened the passenger door. "Let me drop you off," he said. Amara hesitated, then nodded, stepping into the car. The rain didn't stop falling, but something had quietly begun. Inside the car, they talked softly. She told him her name was just Amara, leaving out the Bennett part. He told her about his small startup and his dream of creating a tech empire. She listened like it mattered. Jason thought he had met a woman with a soft story and a quiet struggle. He didn't know she lived in a mansion in Banana Island. Amara didn't lie, she just didn't correct him. And in that quiet omission, their story began. A story built on kindness, truth left untold, and the sweetest kind of disguise. 6 months passed in the blink of an eye. From that rainy night, Jason and Amara became inseparable. They strolled through Freedom Park on Sundays, shared suya by street vendors in Lekki, and sat side by side on the rooftop of Jason's modest apartment, dreaming aloud about the future. Jason talked endlessly about his tech startup, a platform that would help local traders go digital. Amara, always smiling, always supportive, encouraged him, often asking smart questions that made him think deeper. He didn't know she had once overseen Billionaire projects for her father's global conglomerate. She kept her past hidden like fine china safe, untouched. Jason fell in love with what he believed was a woman of simple means but endless heart. Amara cooked for him, listened when he ranted about investors turning him down, and cheered at every small victory. To him, she was his peace, his partner, his muse. He called her his miracle in the rain. And when he knelt before her at a candlelit dinner on the shores of Tarkwa Bay, holding out a modest silver ring, Amara's heart swelled with emotions she couldn't explain. "I don't have much," he said, eyes steady, "but I'll spend my life building a world where you'll never need to stand in the rain again." Amara, her voice caught in her throat, whispered, "Yes." They married in a small ceremony at a church tucked in Yaba. No big names, no media, just love, laughter, and a few close friends. Jason promised her a bright future, and Amara didn't say that she could have bought the future 10 times over. She chose to love him the way he saw her, ordinary, real. And in that simplicity, she found a kind of freedom even her family's wealth had never given her. 2 years into their marriage, Amara stood alone in their modest flat in Surulere, carefully ironing Jason's shirts. The apartment was filled with mementos of his journey, framed certificates from tech competitions, newspaper clippings praising his innovations, and shelves stacked with books on business and leadership. Jason's name was now whispered in startup circles across Nigeria, and he was being hailed as a rising star. What no one knew, not even Jason himself, was that many of his breakthroughs were not by chance. They had been carefully nudged forward by Amara quietly, from the shadows. When Jason struggled to get funding, Amara had made one phone call to an old family contact at Horizon Capital, a major investment firm in Victoria Island. She had asked for nothing but a favor, and the investment came through within days. When his bank loan was stalled, she had whispered her last name to a manager over lunch. She never signed anything, never revealed her identity to Jason. She wanted him to feel like he earned every success. Not because she pitied him, but because she loved how hard he worked, how passionately he believed. She had fallen in love with a man who saw her before he saw her wealth, and she couldn't bring herself to change that. But lately, something had shifted. Jason came home later than usual, dressed sharper than ever, and often seemed distant. He stopped laughing at her silly jokes. His smile, once soft and frequent, now appeared only during phone calls or boardroom meetings. Amara tried to dismiss it, telling herself it was stress, ambition, growth. "He's just busy," she whispered as she stood by the window one night, looking out at the Lagos skyline. But deep in her heart, a quiet ache had begun to bloom. Something was changing, and she wasn't sure she was part of it anymore. The night had an odd stillness about it. Amara was folding laundry when Jason burst into the room, face flushed with excitement. He tossed his suit jacket over a chair and practically bounced toward her. "We got it, Amara," he exclaimed, his voice loud and breathless. She looked up, startled. "Got what?" she asked, masking the flicker of knowing in her eyes. "The Bennett tech deal," he shouted. $10 million. "Babe, this changes everything." Amara paused mid-fold. She smiled, soft and small, and whispered, "That's amazing, Jason. I'm so proud of you." But inside, her heart twisted gently, not from guilt, but from a truth he still didn't know. That very week, she had picked up the phone and called her father, Edward Bennett, the man she had avoided for 2 years. "Daddy," she had said, her voice steady but low, "I need a favor." There was a pause, then the familiar deep timbre of his voice. "So you remember who you are now?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, "and I still stand by my choice. But I believe in this man. He needs a hand, not for me, but for the dream he's chasing." Her father had only said one thing: "If he matters to you, that's enough for me." And just like that, the deal was done. Bennett Group quietly approved the contract, opening doors Jason never even knew existed. Now he stood in their living room, glowing with pride. "This is just the beginning, babe. We're moving to another level." Amara smiled again, truly happy for him. She had planned to tell him the truth on their second anniversary, just weeks away. She wanted the moment to feel right, to reveal her world, her name, and the love behind her silence. But fate had other plans, and Jason's success had started to change more than just their finances. It was changing him. Success has a strange way of exposing the cracks beneath the surface. At first, it was little things. Jason started staying out later than usual. "Networking dinners," he said. He began speaking with a new tone, polished and sharp, like he was constantly performing. He bought new suits, changed his cologne, and his laughter, once reserved for quiet nights with Amara, was now heard mostly over the phone, meant for people she never met. She tried not to think too much of it. She reminded herself of how far they had come, but slowly, quietly, Jason was drifting. Then came a name, Vanessa. One night over dinner, Jason casually mentioned her. "Vanessa's introducing me to some serious players," he said, cutting into his grilled fish without looking up. "She knows people in the Bennett Group, real powerhouses." Amara blinked. "Vanessa?" she repeated, setting her fork down. Jason nodded. "She's sharp. Helped me lock in the deal. Honestly, I think she might be the reason Bennett Tech picked us over the competition." Amara froze. She hadn't heard of Vanessa before, but she recognized the name from a list of her father's assistants. Her throat tightened. She wanted to speak, to tell him the truth. But the moment passed, and he was already onto another topic. That night, Amara stared at herself in the mirror. Her simple blue nightgown clung to her skin in the Lagos heat. "After the anniversary," she whispered, "he'll understand when I tell him everything." But as the days passed, Jason grew colder. He interrupted her more, called her naive when she offered opinions. One night, when she tried to explain a banking issue from her own experience, he chuckled. "You wouldn't understand, babe. High-level deals aren't exactly for people like you." That moment hurt more than she expected. He was building an empire on a foundation she had helped lay, and he didn't even see her anymore. And somehow she still held on, waiting for a day that might never come. The night of their second wedding anniversary arrived with more anticipation than joy. Amara had spent the afternoon preparing. She wore the sapphire blue dress Jason once said made her look like a Lagos princess. Her hair was softly curled, her makeup minimal, her heart full. Earlier that day, he had sent her a short message. Dinner tonight. Just the two of us, and no distractions. She held on to those words like a lifeline. Maybe he remembered. Maybe this would be the night she'd finally tell him everything, the truth about her family, her sacrifices, and her quiet devotion. The rooftop restaurant in Ikoyi was glimmering with candlelight and soft jazz music. Jason was already seated when she arrived, dressed in a sleek black tuxedo, sipping wine. He didn't stand, didn't smile. Amara walked over, still hopeful, and sat across from him. "Happy anniversary," she said warmly. Jason looked at her, then set down his glass with a sigh. "Amara, let's stop pretending," he said. The words hit her like a chill. "Pretending?" she echoed. Jason leaned forward. "I didn't bring you here to celebrate. I brought you here to talk about what's next for me." Confused, Amara sat still, her fingers tightening around the napkin on her lap. "I've grown, Amara. I've outgrown this life, our life. I need to be with people who understand where I'm going. People like Vanessa." Her breath caught. "Vanessa?" He nodded. "She's the daughter of the Bennetts. She's got class, connections. She pulled the strings for me. She gets it." Amara's vision blurred. "But, Jason, He interrupted. "Even my mother agrees. You were a phase, a quiet girl who couldn't keep up." Then came the final blow. "You're not my class anymore." He slid a brown envelope across the table. "Divorce papers." "Don't make this messy," he said before walking away, leaving Amara surrounded by strangers, with nothing but a broken heart and a forgotten dinner reservation. The music still played softly in the background as Amara sat frozen, staring at the untouched wine across the table. Her hands trembled, but her face remained composed. She couldn't cry, not here, not now. She had come with the truth folded in her heart, hoping to finally share her world with Jason. Instead, he had chosen a lie, a shinier version of success, wrapped in someone else's connections. She glanced down at the envelope with her name printed coldly in bold type. Her marriage had ended in the same silence in which it began. Just as she stood to leave, a man approached her table. He was tall, dressed in a navy blue suit that whispered wealth, not screamed it. His face was calm, but his eyes held a flicker of empathy. "Excuse me," he said gently. "I didn't mean to intrude, but I saw what happened." Amara blinked, unsure how to respond. "My name is David Lawson, CEO of Lawson Group," he said, extending a hand. "I have a proposal for you." Amara raised an eyebrow. "A proposal?" she asked, weary. He nodded, his voice quiet. "I need a wife, temporarily, a year, just for appearances. My family's trying to push me into an arranged marriage with someone from the Bennett family." Oddly enough, Amara's heart skipped. She didn't respond immediately. "Why me?" she finally asked. David smiled faintly. "Because you look like someone who needs an exit, and honestly, so do I." He handed her his card. "Think about it. No strings, no pressure, just a contract. I'll wait 24 hours for your decision." Then he walked away, leaving Amara stunned, holding a card instead of a ring, a name instead of a promise. Hours ago, she was a wife. Now she was a stranger to her own story, offered a lifeline by another stranger, one who, for some reason, felt a lot like destiny knocking at the door. The next morning, Amara sat in her living room, still in the same dress from the night before. Her hair was undone, her eyes swollen from a night without sleep. The silence was only broken by a sharp knock at the door. When she opened it, she saw Jason standing tall, a smug look on his face, and beside him, Vanessa, dressed like she'd walked out of a luxury magazine spread. Jason didn't wait for a greeting. He extended a brown envelope. "Let's not drag this out, Amara. Just sign the papers," he said flatly. Vanessa smirked, stepping into the modest apartment. "Wow, this is where you live?" she said with a mocking laugh. "No wonder Jason upgraded." Amara said nothing. She took the envelope, her fingers shaking, but her expression calm. Vanessa circled the room, slowly inspecting it like it was beneath her. "Honestly," she said, "maybe you can work as a maid in our house. At least then you'd be useful." Jason didn't stop her. He didn't speak. Amara opened the envelope, picked up a pen, and signed the divorce papers without saying a word. She handed it back, eyes steady. Jason looked surprised at how composed she was. Vanessa, however, rolled her eyes. Poor thing. No ring, no class, no name. As the door shut behind them, Amara stood in the stillness. She didn't cry. Instead, she picked up her phone and sent a single message. I'm ready. That afternoon, she met David Lawson at a quiet registry office in Ikoyi. No cameras, no flowers. Just 2 signatures and a silent understanding. When the clerk said, "You are now husband and wife," David looked at her and said gently, "We don't owe the world any explanations." Amara smiled faintly. She had lost everything, but somehow she'd just been given a strange new beginning. Weeks turned into months, and the woman the world once knew as Amara Bennett quietly vanished from public view. In her place, a mysterious figure emerged in the Nigerian fashion scene. Elena, a designer whose bold colors, traditional textures, and elegant simplicity took the industry by storm. No one had ever seen her face. Her designs sold out before they hit shelves, and whispers surrounded her identity like perfume. She didn't do interviews, she didn't walk red carpets, but her name, Eliana, was on every fashion magazine's lips from Lagos to London. David Lawson, her contract husband, never asked questions. He provided stability, public support, and stayed respectfully distant. Something subtle began to change. He started inviting Amara, now Eliana, to his business dinners, to art shows, to private family events. And though his family disapproved, he never left her side. His mother called her a liability. His board members whispered that she was too quiet and not pedigree. David stood firm. "She's real," he said. "That's what matters." Amara, once hidden behind lies and heartbreak, started to feel seen, not for her name, but for her essence. But the illusion began to crack when Vanessa, eager for fame, began claiming she was Elena. At events, she wore Eliana's gowns. She smiled slyly when reporters asked questions and never corrected their assumptions. At a major fashion gala hosted by Lawson Group, Vanessa stood arm in arm with Jason, boasting about her designs. "This is the genius behind the new fashion era," Jason declared, grinning for the cameras. But just as Vanessa posed for a photo in a gown she hadn't created, the room fell silent. The doors opened and Amara walked in, wearing a black gown of her own design with the Elena insignia pinned to her shoulder. The gala hall, once buzzing with excitement, fell into stunned silence as Amara, now fully embracing her identity, as Elena stepped into the room. Her gown was a statement in itself. Midnight black silk, embroidered with Yoruba-inspired patterns in gold thread, and pinned delicately on her shoulder was the Elena emblem, gleaming like truth finally unveiled. By her side stood David Lawson, calm and collected, watching the scene unfold like a man who had known this moment would come. Vanessa's eyes widened. Jason, standing proudly next to her just moments ago, shifted uncomfortably. Who invited her?" Vanessa hissed to no one in particular. Amara didn't need a microphone. Her presence spoke volumes. But then the host stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, before our final showcase, we have a special announcement from the Elena brand." The spotlight turned. Amara walked toward the stage, each step confident and unhurried. When she reached the mic, her voice was soft but unwavering. "My name," she said, "is Amara Bennett. I am the founder, creative director, and sole designer behind the Elena brand." Gasps rippled across the room. Jason blinked, stunned. Vanessa stammered, "She's lying. I'm Eliana. Everyone knows." But Amara held up a folder. "These are my original sketches, signed, dated. Here are contracts with Stonebridge Group and with Lawson Group. And here," she added as her team walked in, "are my staff, the people you've never met because you never worked with them." A designer stepped forward, eyes fierce. Vanessa only showed up after the brand was already famous. She posed as the boss, but it was always Amara. Cameras flashed wildly. Reporters scribbled. Investors whispered and began to walk away from Vanessa, turning instead toward the real visionary. Jason stood frozen, watching the woman he had discarded reveal the empire she had quietly built. Amara didn't gloat. She didn't look back. She simply handed the mic back to the host, took David's arm, and walked off the stage with quiet dignity. That night, the world didn't just meet the real Eliana. They met the woman who had once been underestimated, abandoned, and erased, and had risen to become unforgettable. What did you think of when rain fell on her crown? Was Amara right to keep her identity hidden? Did Jason truly love her, or just the idea of her? And what about David? Was their connection fate, or a fresh start? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Who was your favorite character? What moment hit you the hardest? If you enjoyed this story and want more powerful tales of love, betrayal, and redemption set in African backdrops, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next chapter.